Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to do a review of GMT's new coming game, Plains Indian Wars, that came out recently. I've had it for about 6-8 weeks now, and it's a game designed by John Poniski and graphics by Terry Leeds. What this does is it covers a period of history, according to the box. Reduces the monumental and catastrophic series of conflicts to the basic elements, and that conflict was that the Great Plains in the latter half of the 1800s was a cultural battleground with the native way of life under siege by many, many invaders. Let's cut to the chase and get rolling on what's inside. Alright, let's take a look at what comes in Plains Indian Wars. GMT game designed by John Ponisk. I'm sure he'll tell me. First off, you get this gorgeous map. This is the map. It's not to scale, but it's a map meant to represent the plains upon which this battle will be fought. You've got Mexico, Canada, the Rockies, St. Louis, Sacramento, and all points in between. You start with that. You also have every one of the four main factions is going to have a deck of cards, and you will not be able to reuse these. You don't shuffle them. Once you're through the deck, it triggers the end game if that happens. Each of these cards is either an event card, or it's a migration card, or a war card, or a engagement card, etc. Each of the factions works differently on that, and so each of the four decks represent the options available to you on your turn. Also, we have very shiny, glorious, shimmering, luscious dice. These are the same dice I think they used in bayonets and tomahawks as far as construction, and they are delightful. Viscerally delicious. So we have dice for each of the four main factions, and then we have units for that. Now, I cheated. Well, first let's go into this. Like, there's a disc for each of the 7 different factions that are going to play a part. Like, 4 of these are ones that actually actively have decks. Some of these are piggybacking factions that work in conjunction with one or more players. For example, the settlers will also handle the wagons. The cavalry will handle the enemy Indians. Yeah, the Indians, well, they'll take care of their own. You also have a player aid, which gives you information. I'll get into my thoughts on that later. They're not kind. And then you have the manual, the not very long manual, very short. Yeah, like that's what we have here. So the other thing to note is that the game comes with, well, it basically comes with these squares, and these squares in the box are represented like this is a settler square. There's orange cubes, there's green cubes, etc. I really didn't think that did justice to the experience, the visceral experience on the play side. So what you're going to see here, I'm going to warn you now, this is customized. I ordered some meeples from Amazon, mega cheap, and so I'm going to use, instead of cubes, I'm going to use meeples of the appropriate colors for the different areas. I just like it better. But again, when you buy the box, you're going to get cubes. You're not going to get the meeples. And yes, we're going to use sideways meeples for the railroad tracks, and the the wagons are going to be sideways too. I'm working on it. I only half blinged it. Anyway, that's what comes in the box. Now let's get into how you play Plains Indian Wars. Okay, so the object of the game is to win. How you win is through a matrix of different victory point conditions. I highly recommend everybody go to BGD and print out this legitimately like usable and relevant sequence of play. It is, in fact, the player aid that this game deserves. And take a look. But here you're going to see ways that victory points can occur. The Indians are going to get victory points for a variety of different things. Everything from not being able to complete the railroad to eliminating wagons, which aren't as easy as it sounds. Provide the control. They're going to gain and lose points. The U.S. player in the same way is going to get kind of an opposite amount of points. If they finish the railroad, they get some points right away. They want to get those wagon trains successfully across to the Rocky Mountains, etc. So that's kind of how you win. Now, how you go about that? Well, it all comes down to this beautiful little engine called the disc. This is Discworld, the disc draw. And so these are all how you're going to activate and trigger. And the beauty is these are going to go into the magic bag of decisiveness. Woo! We give it a modern shake. Shaky, shaky. And we then draw these cubes out. Cubes. They're not cubes. They're circular cubes. And the first one is black. Now that, oh, blue. Blue, what can blue do for you? All right. Probably not be compliant. All right, so black means it's railroad time. This is kind of an unfortunate situation because the railroad starts here and goes all the way through. Whenever that railroad token comes up, if you have settlers adjacent to the nearest empty spaces, to put it simply, you can build up to 3 railroad tracks based on how many settlers you have adjacent to the road as it's being built. In other words, you've got settlers sort of making a little bit of a safe space, pardon the pun, and then you can build out railroad sections. The same way over here, except it's a little tricky on Sacramento. These spots here means you got to go through some serious mountaintop experiences. And so you actually have to roll to see if you can even build there. Now, we don't have anything here, so we're not going to be able to build. This is probably the worst time for the black cube or black circle to come up. But we're going to try. We're going to try here. We're going to roll 2 dice. If any of these dice have anything non-blank, okay, well, the railroad went nowhere. If it did, I'd be able to put a railroad add progress token on each of these as I go. Once you get all of the mountains filled out, then you can start normally doing railroad movements and moving units out of Sacramento into the other areas. So let's go next. And we're going to see what is the next cue. The next circle up for bids is Brown. Now let's see what Brown can do for us. Brown is one of the main factions, so Brown can take a card. These are the 3 cards available to it. Migration, migration, migration. I'm actually going to switch that. Let me do something different. Let me do something different here. I want to show you events. On your turn, you have to play a card. At least one. Migration are basically how you manipulate forces. You add forces to your cubes, to your area, wherever they need to go based on the faction. You activate groups and then you move them. But before or after, you can play events. And so you're trying to mix and match events to maximize the ability in each of your turns to do the most good for your side. Remove to the Indian casualty box 1 Indian cube. Well, that's not going to be very effective because we don't really have settlers even on the board yet. So that event is not useful. So let's just do a migration. Now you'll notice that for the most part, migrations are these 3 modifier. There's not too many crazy things. But Oregon Trail, it doesn't matter. Exodus is just like find 4 cubes, activate 3. This is exactly the same thing. We're going to use Exodusters. Why not? Let's use Exodusters. So we're going to discard that. And we're going to take 4 settlers. And we have a choice. We can put, with settlers, we can either choose to put them in St. Louis, in that box, or we can choose to move up to 4 of those to Sacramento. Now I'm going to do 1 here, and no, I'm going to actually move all 4 here, because right now, we're a ways from being able to get people in Sacramento onto the map and engaged. So we're going to move that over here. Then, we can activate up to 3 groups. Well, guess what? We have 1 group, and that's it. And then we're going to move them up to 2 regions. Of course, they can't go past regions where it causes where enemies are. So we really are limited here. But you know what? We're going to go. We're going to take 4 of these. We're going to move this out. We're going to take these 4, and we're going to move to here. Now we have what's called influenced movement. For every 2 cubes, you can take a blue cube if you want. And enemy factions, for example, any 2. It's weird because any 2 of these can take a blue cube. Any 1 of these can take take 2 brown cubes. When it comes to enemies, which are kind of basically Indians that are enemies to the Indians you're fighting against for real, then you can do it's a 2-to-1 ratio there as well. So anyway, so we're here, we've moved here, and that's it. That's as far as we can go. Now we have conflict. Now we have Indians, and we have cavalry and settlers. That cannot be. They will not coexist. Let us not let that happen. So what happens is, you count it up, you have 2 orange dice. So if you have 2 orange meeple, orange cubes, you can roll up to 2. If you have 4 orange cubes, or meeples, you can roll 2. Exactly. It's capped. All right, now we have 1 dice here that we're going to roll. And here, notice we're going to get not only the 2 for the settlers, but we're also going to get a blue. We're going to roll these all at once. Okay, so blue and brown. I have 2 hits, and I have, this is a hit. So basically these are simultaneous, so it doesn't matter. A hit, orange takes a hit, goes into the casualty box, but orange also administers a hit, so the largest faction, in this case settlers, goes here. Now we've made some progress. We have the cavalry protecting our settlers, and settlers cavalry have I think a 50% chance of hitting something. And yeah, now notice what's interesting about the combat is that there's 3 phases of combat. You can either hit something, you can have a treaty symbol, or you can have a miss or a retreat. The blanks are actually retreats. So if I didn't like this situation and I wanted to retreat, let's do this here. Say we had that retreat symbol would let one of my units here retreat back to St. Louis, or if they were here, retreat back to a safe space. So that's something that you have to consider in combat, is that there's a lot of possibility that hit and runs and escapism and such occurs. So it's not like everything is just a bloody battle to the death. There are ways for, if you're in an unwinnable position, to be able to do that, or live to fight another day, per se. All right, so do that. So we're going to draw a 3rd card. Always draw up to 3, and then we draw the next cube. Green. Okay, well, now it's the Indian turn. So what are they going to do? Well, you have to ignore. Ooh, this is an interesting one. The remainder of this disc draw. So I think this is what's called an enduring event, where you can add 2 northern plain tribes to any one region. I'm going to put them here and here. Let's just do that. Let's face them upright. Stand tall, young warriors. And then we're just going to set this here to kind of let us know that ignore all retreat and treaty symbols for the remainder of this disc draw. Okay then. That means they're really into it. They're into it big time. And then we choose which of these we're going to use. We're going to use this one. So we will go ahead and set that aside. We will grab 3, and we will put them here. Anywhere we can control, we're going to place them. Let's do this. And then we're going to activate 3 groups. We're going to activate this group, and this group. All right, so, and then we can move them up to 2 regions. So, for example, I could move these up to here, because as the Northern Plain tribes and the Southern Plain tribes, you have to take over. To get some extra benefits, bonuses, victory points, you have to be able to control at least 3 of these regions, purple regions, on both sides to be able to qualify for victory points. So it's not just the settlers and the cavalry and the wagons. You're also going against enemy Indian tribes as well. So we're going to move that up there. We're going to move 1 here, and we're going to move this here. Now, why would we do that? Because as you move troops in, the more mixed units you have, the more dice you can roll. Since you can roll up to 2 orange and 2 green, you could eventually reinforce green. If you have 2 orange and 2 greens, well, you've got yourself a situation where you can roll 4 dice, and that adds a lot of firepower. All right, so we're going to go ahead and discard that. Again, we have this, and we're going to fight. So we have two greens, and we have a purple dice, and we're going to roll that, and we're going to find out what happens. Green hits purple. Ouch. Goodbye. Casualty box. Just FYI, once you have enough casualties, when a disc comes up of a given color and they're using their activating of groups, you can activate one group to move all of your casualties back into the ready box. So there is a way to reinforce that. All right. So look at that. We have now conquered purple. Yay, purple. What can purple do for you? Apparently not much that turn. Okay. And we didn't have to worry about retreat and treaty symbols because, well, we just flat out took them out. All right. So now we're going to do another draw, and this time it's purple. Okay. So the cavalry side takes on the purple. And the first thing you can do is take one enemy. Again, these are enemy Indians that cautiously ally with the U.S. cavalry. They have a shaky alliance together. And place it anywhere. And place it here. And then you can activate one group and move it up to 2 spaces. So we're going to do this, just to kind of bolster it up a bit. Why not? Let's have some fun. All right, and that's that for purple. Like, some of these turns just go by really fast. All right, time to draw yet another cylinder. Sowing the cylinders of love. All right, orange. Now it's time for the Southern Plain tribes to do some work. What are they going to do? Well, let's take a look and see. Event, and a war party, which is their equivalent of migration or whatever. Add up to 2. Yeah, this one's less useful because we're right towards the end of the whole disc draw phase. Add up to 2 Southern Plains Tribes cubes to 1 region. The attacker's treaty symbols cause hits in 1 battle. Got that right. Look at that. So that's a masterful effect. All right, then we're going to use War Party. We can add 2 cubes. Again, the Indians can add wherever they have control, which is basically they're alone or they outnumber somebody. And then activate 2 groups and move up to 1 region. So let's activate this and move these here. And let's move these here. Okay, now we have a battle. This one gets interesting. I've got 2 orange for this, and we haven't really run into ambush yet. I'll teach you that in a bit. And there, and then here we have 1 and 2. So we have a pretty even situation here. Let's see how this pans out. Wow, that was putrid. Okay, so the cavalry have a hit. So the largest group takes a hit. So that's orange. Orange is out of the battle. That's it. Now, orange, the treaty symbol means that green's staying there, but the orange have the opportunity to retreat. This doesn't look good for them, so they're going to go ahead and retreat back 1. Yeah, that's totally fine. And then there's an opportunity for the settlers to retreat twice, but they're not going to. They like this situation. Now we're down to... Wait a minute, what did I do? Did I do that wrong? I think I did do that wrong. Didn't we have... We had 2. Did I? Oh, well. You know what? Let's just go with this. Let's do that. Okay. Pretend that almost was lucid. Okay. A treaty symbol again. And that's another hit by the cavalry, and that puts that out. And then green has an opportunity to retreat, so it does. And there we go. Now let's run to some I'll wait till the end of the turn. All right, so here we go. So once again, there was thwartation, and it didn't work out quite so well for the plains, but oh well. We'll try again next time. Oh, I need to... All right, so there we go. And finally, we have 2 more coming in. And that is white. White is real easy. Now, we already have 2 wagons here, so we're going to add 2 more wagons. And then we can move those wagons out onto the road. and they're going to follow the road region by region. The destination of the wagons is to get using one of their pathways to the Rockies. Once they enter the Rockies, that counts for victory points for the U.S. side. Now, they don't necessarily cause an engagement, so they're not going to proactively attack, but the Indians can attack them. Although if there's any other U.S. units in there, they have to finish off the U.S. units before they attack the wagons. So we can make it go here, we can make it go here. This is interesting because I probably would move this here and I'm leave it there. That leaves it vulnerable because the next time, if green comes up next, green could actually take a shot at taking out this wagon, and then it's a victory point for that. However, it takes 2 hits to do so. So the odds all alone for these 2 units are not awesome to be able to take out the wagon. And the wagon can roll and fight back. But also if there's a situation where the wagon retreats, it retreats forward. It always retreats forward. So there's some risk involved. It's probably better to mix some orange units, to get some Southern Plains tribes and Northern Plains tribes and get them involved to try to have a chance to take out the wagons. They're surprisingly rigid and tough. Okay, so that's it for that. And then finally, we have blue. Now it's cavalry's turn. And this will end the disc round. So we look here. I'm not going to do that one because that's a little tricky to show. But there's one card that you play immediately, Custer. It's pretty awesome, but I don't want to bog down with it right now. Somebody do a playthrough. Please, GMT. Do a playthrough, a modern one. All right, so play before Southern Plain Tribes disc is drawn. Can't use it, so we're just going to have to use this engagement here. One of these. And honestly, these are identical, so whatever. Fort Key. I mean, the text isn't identical. I'm sure it's representative of awesome things. But we're going to go ahead and do that. And this says we have three cubes, per se, meeple cubes. And start here. And you can activate 2 groups and move up to 2 regions. So I'm really not, I don't think we have enough firepower really to move from here into any other region that's going to not cause a ruckus. So we're going to stay here. So we're going to activate that region only. And we can move, so this can move these 2 with it. And we're going to move all 3 of these out here. And again, the 1 cavalry unit can, actually no, we can take them all out here. Yeah. All right, so here we go. So now we're in battle. We want to clear the way here so that the settlers can start doing their duty, because again, if we get the black cube and it's time to build trains, notice I have, if these remain, I have 3 units here adjacent and 3 up here. Maximum is 3, but I can build a train, pieces of the train along, and that helps me out. Not only does it help act as a timer for the game, because once it's finished, that triggers the end of the game, and if it finishes, it's points for the cavalry, but also it's important because you can do railroad movement eventually, where cubes in St. Louis, one movement that you use can take units from St. Louis and it can move them anywhere down the track to the end of wherever the railhead is. So if the track was up to here, I could quickly move units over and deploy them farther out, so that like later in the game you're not having to trudge units continually over and over. You can actually maximize your distance. Anyway, that's for later. For now, we have some battle to do. So the last thing we have is we're going to roll these 2. We're going to roll these 2. We're going to roll these 2. Yeah, that's what we got. All right, we're going to roll 6 dice. You ready? I'm ready. 2 hits for the cavalry, and again a treaty symbol but blanks. Oh, that's bad. So both of them are gone. So we have effectively had a field day right now. And again, the settlers being where they are, helping them spread out, is making it easier for the train to be able to be built quickly in the next round. In the next round, we're almost assuredly guaranteed to be able to at least move 3 lengths over here and continue the road. That's about it. That's a full round. It doesn't even start to go towards the late game stages, but the effective idea is, and I'll just go again, like, again, you're building the railroad over time. And then again, you roll die, you get through the mountains, and you can be moving, once you're through the mountains, then you can do railroad moves to move these units out and start causing a ruckus there. You've got your Indian tribes, and they're going to be trying to spread out and advance and take over these units here, these regions that they take out, these regions out and take over. It's going to be at their advantage for victory points. Again, like if you're the northern plains or southern plains, you've got enemies all around you. If you're the US, you're really focusing on spreading out, establishing a nice beachhead, on both sides to try to really use your forces to take a big chunk out of these territories, and allying with the enemies to the north and south to try to use them while they use you for maximum benefit. So that's really Plains Indian Wars. Hopefully I didn't make too many mistakes. We'll get into the rules in a little bit, but at least this gives you a taste of what you can expect, some of the things that you can count on as you go and play through this game in the various rounds. All right, let's get into my final thoughts on Plains Indian Wars. Okay, final thoughts on Plains Indian Wars. John Paniski. Graphics by Terry Leeds. Let's go over the cons first, and then the pros, followed by my summary of the game. I'm not going to lie to you, this was a more difficult manual slash rulebook work than I needed. I didn't think I needed to go through that much. In some ways, it felt a little bit like in the digital world, it'd be more like a little bit of an early access kind of vibe, something not reminiscent of GMT games in general. Let me explain. I have been blessed by GMT games. Whenever they cover a historical aspect, the rulebook, there's a playbook, there's a really chock-full of player aids. There's a lot of things going on that really help set the stage for the type of experience you're having. Not everyone's like this. A lot of people can dive in, play a game for the game's sake. I appreciate the fact that GMT games tend to do a lot of groundwork and framework to help people set the mental stage. For example, when we had Versailles 1919, I read Paris 1919. When we had Churchill, I read American Warlords. Caesar games, like, whoa, my gosh, like Fire in the Lake, Colonial Twilight. All of these games have a lot of designer notes and things that help really set the stage on not well-known or not well understood conflicts in history. I was very surprised that there was none of that in Plains Indian Wars, other than the snippets of events that happen on the cards, which admittedly are very cool. Because it didn't have a bibliography, I couldn't reference it and go, hey, I'm going to learn about it here and there. Now, there has been a design on the Board Game Geek forums. The designer has chimed in and said that this was an omission. He provided a full bibliography, so I was able to use that to order some books that he used to make the game that was inspired by, so that I could go in and kind of, again, like relearn. I just love doing that. That's kind of my way. Not for everybody, probably not a big deal to anybody, but just in case you were interested in my thoughts, here they are. I do miss the playbook with meaningful examples. There's a couple in there, but a game of this, even a game this simple, deserves something to really cover some of the edge conditions or the unusual things that might crop up in a game of this type. Yeah, so there's very little beyond the very, to its defense, you will get a feel again for what's going on with the cards themselves, with the artwork, with the game flow. So I wouldn't be too angry with that. The other thing though is that the game's rules work well for the golden path. We have this thing in development, game development, video game development, where if you have QA people, the golden path is basically people get in, they play the game the way you think they should play, they go down the yellow brick road, they follow things to its inevitable end in a way that you expect them to. Great QA people go for the fringes, go for the edge conditions, go to stress and min-max and whatever. And this does a good job of explaining the rules on the golden path. But once you get off the beaten path, things get a little bit harried when it comes to things. And the problem is that the more I played this game with different people, the more these things come into play, and then you got to go search for a solution and try and deduce things with the manual. Some of the rules are flat out just wrong. There's a section that says enduring events as long as they're on the top of the discard pile, and then in the forums it's like, oh, never mind, actually you just set those off to the side. The player aids in the that you get, it doesn't look, it's similar to but not identical to the one in the manual. The one in the rule book is weird and wrong, and that the highlighted part, like, it's got the wrong sections it references you to, and it's just really strange. Fortunately, it's such an easy flow that it's not that big of a deal, and again, the additional Board Game Geek player aid that some wonderful person did kind of mitigates that somewhat. But there's still things, rules murkiness that I still had difficulty enough that I actually set this game aside when I got it for 6 weeks to wait until the rules questions caught up, and then I could feel I could go in and at least get some answer that didn't mean like making stuff up on my own, which I could do, but a lot of people do. They'll just go, let's just make our best guess and everybody agree on it, and that's fine. I want to know the specifics. It's just kind of my inclination. The player aids, so we went over that. The rules, Marcus, yeah, like examples like retreating into conflict. Turns out there was a variant that wasn't in the rule book that was but that was commonly used, and so that caused me a little bit of confusion. Wagon attacks when you have units and then they're all gone, but then you have wagons left and there's a treaty. Do you get to, there were two different answers for what happens. Do you get to attack them, or does the treaty? Like, the thing is, these are little things that you flesh through, you put through a play guide, a modern updated frickin' video that really just says, hey, like, here it is. There's some terms that were used that were like freely in the play. The player guide says you can freely move, but it never uses the term freely anywhere else in the guide or book, and so that caused a little bit of confusion. Like, does that mean something's different? What's the difference between freely moving, being able to move, and not being able to move? Again, stuff like that. Overloaded terms. When you have a faction called enemies, and then you're also using like, oh, but you're the enemy, an enemy group is not the same as a group of enemies. It's just in engagements, like the cavalry have an actual engagement card, but then when you go into battle, they're called engagements. These are just things that just kind of like go, this is not typical. Typically GMT tries to be, generally the manuals I've read in the last 30, 40 GMT games I've gotten are a little more precise than that. And again, the player aid that comes with it had information I didn't really need to even reference. I could know. I know what the dice are composed of. I don't need two identical sets of the 6-sided of the same die. Whatever. If it's great for others, that's great. Didn't need that. Again, most of the things about the rulebook are not going to be an issue for seasoned war gamers. They're just not. They're going to be able to read between the lines. They're going to be able to make their best judgment and darn the rules, whatever they are. But there is still, again, that murkiness for people coming in going, oh, this looks simple, and it's listed at slight low to medium complexity and stuff, which again, that's an arbitrary mark too. But if you're coming to this game and you're like, I could introduce this to people that wouldn't play Comancheria or Navajo Wars or something more complicated, it would have been nicer to have a little more streamlining going on in that. And yeah, there's a surprising number of cow pies in this pasture. So, and then the only other thing is that for all its glory, like, I look at this board, I look, cubes. Like, I understand that cubes are the standard, but man, I am so glad I upgraded. We'll leave it at that. Okay, enough of the whining. Let's get to the pros. The number one thing I appreciate is that everything that I said as a con, realize that the responses and the activity on the forums by the designers and fans of the games has been so speedy and so helpful. I am glad I waited a month. I have a queue of answers. I have people, these guys, like, I ask a question and I'll get an answer from, I believe the gentleman who did this solo variant. I literally got one in minutes on several questions. So real props to that. I love it. Supporting your game makes up for a myriad of things. Believe me. The map is absolutely stunning and gorgeous. I went to frame it. I went to cuddle it. It is glorious. No, it's not to scale. Yes, it's not. I get it. Things are stretched, whatever. It's beautiful. It's representative. The dice are so chunky and delightful. I want all my dice to be that way. The cards are the nice, big tarot, not almost tarot size cards. They're big. They're glossy. They've got wonderful detail. I love the little bits of history on them. Like, you cannot go wrong with these. Presentation is like glorious. It's the glamour shot of board game art. So and yeah, that's all I can say. It's beautiful. You know this. On the Golden Path, or
if you're on the golden path, or once you've understood the different crevices of knowledge of the side things that you got to learn, the game is smooth, the game is memorable, the game is constantly keeping you engaged. The turns don't take forever. You don't have to consult, combat results tables. You don't have to deal with any. You don't really feel like you go into the minutia. You go into the surface level fun, the spaghetti western kind of like, okay, how did we do, and stuff. I love it. The combat reminds me a little bit of Conquest of Paradise in a bit, in that it's not always total victory. Well, it is, but you also have opportunities again to pull back and fight another day. Like, you have the retreating abilities that happen, and they're constant. You go like, what, this isn't gonna work, but I'll bet I can retreat somewhere where I can do something and come back in a different position, and maybe even come out with a net gain. Um, you have you can reorganize in a meaningful way. The retreat versus the treaty is interesting. The whole thing can be like, your treaty is, it's contextually sensible, and I can totally see it in my mind. You've got everything ready. You've got this big combat, this big encounter, this battle going on. You roll it, and suddenly everyone decides to do a treaty, and like, oh my gosh, like, yay. So the big side tells the little side to go somewhere else. They all shake hands. They begrudgingly go their separate ways. There's this little tiny fake peace that goes on. You can totally see people sitting down going, well, I really wanted to kill you, but instead let's have coffee and go this way. And so I really, really like that aspect. I like how that fits in thematically with what's going on. I love the simple combined arms kind of feel. Like, you do need to work together in all the different places and the different ways. You work together to get the best odds. You can't just go, well, we've got the Northern Army and the Southern Army. You've got to mix the army. You've got to mix your food. You got to toss salad these people together so that you can position yourself to roll the maximum amount of dice. Because if you're not cavalry, you're going to have kind of an uphill battle in being able to do any sort of damage in that regard. There's a lot of character to the factions and their relationship. This isn't just the orange dice have these hit points, these stats, and the purple dice have this stats. It's not. They fit and they work. The Indian tribes have to work together. They make each other stronger. The cavalry is not as plentiful, but it's powerful, and they can steer and support and in charge. They have to play peacemaker with enemies in this sort of shaky but often mutually beneficial, uneasy partnership, all to for the common good of either side. You've got settlers and enemies being situationally beneficial Indians, basically, the enemies, and the interchange with them in the context of cavalry. It's sort of like a parent trying to keep two kids that can't get along, separated on the playground. That's brilliant. That's a brilliant way to really imbue the story that's trying to be told here, of this particular conflict. When it comes to solo, there's a very mature solo variant, or two or three or four, that's added in. And what's interesting is that this was, when I read it, grafted after the fact. When everything, which usually means disaster, like, okay, we gotta, not disaster, but it means you gotta hack in and kind of like fudge in some things, and it can get kludgy or feel kludgy when that happens sometimes. It doesn't happen that way here. This is a really polished, really well done solo variant. It's satisfying, particularly the first variant, I think. And even with the kludgy BYOD, you can bring your own dice and such, because it wasn't able to come with components. The solo designer was able to do something remarkable in taking a game already in the hopper and splicing in a solo variant that's easily on par with the great solo variants that I expect from GMT. So, yay for that. Now, while I have railed against the rules a bit, as far as the clarity of the rulebook in places and some of the murkiness, it does speak to the game's benefit that it has these off-the-beaten-path thematic situations that you run into. Like, what if what if my people really, they want to move to the Rockies, but then they want to move out over here, and what if my, Indians and settlers wind up together, and, who wins that fight and stuff, and, it's all in tune with this sort of sweeping saga across the plains that I think was trying to be evoked here. So, anyway, in Summary. You know, for a GMT kind of style, and I've gotten kind of used to kind of they have sort of a pattern, not always, but general pattern of how their games are and flow and stuff. This is a somewhat quirky and uncharacteristic GMT game that once past the learning bocage and into the fields of play, it makes for a surprisingly approachable and memorable endeavor, not just for 2 players or 3 or 4, but also for solo as well. It's nothing short of exquisite in its presentation. And in the matches I've played thus far, it's been a string of just miniature joys and agonies for all the participants. There's a lot of games that I've played that deal with the topic of Indians and, you know, encroachers, be that the U.S. or Mexico or whatever. You know, Comancheria, Navajo Wars from GMT, and, you know, several others from other groups, and they all feature this admittedly realistic, bleak, dark, you know, ship's gonna sink anyway, DiCaprio kind of vibe, and it's both intrinsically authentic, but it does lead the player down a path of sort of mastering the misery. Plains Indian Wars takes a different approach, and it still imbues that gravity of the situation and a reverence for the topic, but in a much less bleak manner, and that is, frankly, yeah, uplifting. If such a thing can be said of it, while still being reverent and respectful of the topic. So my advice to you is to buy the game, leverage the BGG player aid available. I think it's going to help you out a lot. Hit up the active and very friendly designers there that have worked on the game. If you're silly like me, then bling out the game. I have plans to get little railroad pieces. I want to get real wagons, and I want to get like little settler bills and whatever. I'm going to and stuff, and then just enjoy the heck out of this game for years to come. That's what I'm going to do. So anyway, thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.